My name is Kelsey Morgan. I am 34 years old, and I spend my days as a cybersecurity consultant, building firewalls and locking down systems for companies that can't afford to be hacked. I've seen what happens when someone gains unauthorized access to a business. The chaos, the finger-pointing, the desperate scramble to figure out who did what and when. But nothing in my career prepared me for the text message that detonated my family on a Wednesday night. It came in at 9:47 p.m., right between a glass of wine and a rerun of some cooking show I wasn't really watching. I was sitting on my couch in yoga pants, half thinking about whether I should order takeout or just go to bed early. Normal Wednesday night thoughts. Then my phone buzzed. My brother Nathan's name lit up the screen. I expected something mundane. A question about the vendor payment schedule, a reminder about Sunday dinner. Maybe a photo of his new car that he couldn't actually afford. Instead, I got this. Family meeting happened tonight. Decision was unanimous. You're no longer part of this family or the business. Don't contact us. We're moving forward without you. No context, no warning, no explanation. Just a verdict delivered like a termination notice from someone who had never worked a real job in his life. For a second, I just stared at the screen, feeling my pulse thud in my ears. The cooking show kept playing in the background, something about soufflés, and the disconnect between the cheerful TV host and the words on my phone made everything feel surreal. Then the part of my brain that spends all day anticipating worst-case scenarios kicked in. The part that gets paid to think 3 steps ahead of people who want to cause damage. I didn't call back. I didn't beg for an explanation. I didn't send a long emotional message asking what I had done wrong. I typed 2 words, understood, goodbye. Then I went to work. I logged into the family business accounts I had set up 3 years ago when our dad got sick and someone needed to modernize the books. I changed every password, every single one. The business checking account, the payroll system, the vendor portal, the cloud storage where all our contracts lived, the website backend, the email server. Then I logged into the investment accounts I had structured for our parents' retirement, the ones Nathan had never bothered to learn how to access, and I froze every permission that wasn't mine. Finally, I pulled up the LLC operating agreement I had drafted when we formalized the family construction business, the one that required my signature for any major financial decision, and I sent a certified letter to our lawyer confirming that no changes were authorized without my written consent. By the time my wine glass was empty, every digital door they thought they could walk through was locked. And I was the only one holding the keys. I figured that would be the end of it. They wanted me out? Fine. They could figure out how to run a business without the person who actually kept it running. Instead, by 6 a.m. the next morning, my phone showed 52 missed calls. Nathan, Mom, Dad, numbers I didn't recognize. The most recent voicemail was from Nathan himself, his voice cracking. Kelsey, we can't access anything. The payroll is due Friday. Please, we need to talk. I listened to it twice, then laughed out loud in my empty apartment. Because they had no idea the problem wasn't me being gone. It was what I took with me when I left. Stay with me until the end, and you'll see how one cruel text turned into a satisfying revenge story, where the person they voted out ended up holding everything they needed to survive. The next morning, I made coffee and watched my phone light up like a Christmas tree having a seizure. 52 missed calls had become 78 by the time I finished my first cup. Texts piled up in a cascade of panic. From Mom, Kelsey, honey, please call us. There's been a misunderstanding. From Dad, kiddo, we need to talk. This is serious, please. From Nathan, stop playing games, people need to get paid. This isn't funny. From a number I didn't recognize. This is Marcus Webb from Webb & Associates. I represent Morgan Family Construction. Please contact me immediately regarding access to company accounts. I read them all with the same detached interest I'd give a spam folder. Then I opened my laptop and started documenting. Screenshot, save, screenshot, save. Every text, every voicemail transcription, every timestamp. If this was going to turn into a legal situation, I wanted receipts that could survive a courtroom. Around noon, I finally sent 3 short replies. To Mom, I'm safe. I received Nathan's message. I'm honoring his request for no contact. To Dad, I heard the voicemail. I'm not ready to discuss anything. To the lawyer, I received your message. Any communication should be in writing. I will not be joining calls at this time. Then I silenced my phone and went back to my actual job, the one that paid me to protect systems from exactly the kind of chaos I had just created for my own family. To understand why I had all the keys in the first place, you have to understand the Morgan family dynamic. And to understand that, you have to go back about 30 years. My dad built Morgan family construction from nothing. Literally nothing. Started with a pickup truck, a tool belt, and a willingness to work 18-hour days when I was still in diapers. He poured concrete in the summer heat and framed houses in the winter cold. He missed birthday parties and school plays and probably a decade of sleep. By the time I was in high school, he had a crew of 15 and contracts all over the county. Morgan family construction wasn't fancy, but it was solid. The kind of business that survived recessions because my dad knew how to budget and his handshake actually meant something. Nathan was the golden child. The son. The heir apparent. The one who was supposed to take over someday and carry the Morgan name into the next generation. He played football, dated cheerleaders, and coasted through community college on the assumption that the business would be waiting for him whenever he decided to show up. He was charming in that easy way that some people are, the kind of charm that gets you out of trouble, instead of keeping you from getting into it in the first place. My parents adored him. Every touchdown was celebrated like a national holiday. Every girlfriend was welcomed like a future daughter-in-law. Every mediocre achievement was treated as evidence of his inevitable greatness. I was the backup plan nobody talked about. The daughter who got good grades but never got the same level of celebration. The one who learned to code in middle school because I was bored and curious. The one who figured out how to balance the books when I was 16 because someone had to. And Nathan was too busy being Nathan to notice the business was slowly drowning in disorganized paperwork. I didn't resent it. Not exactly. I just accepted it as the way things were. Nathan was the sun, and I was the moon, reflecting whatever light happened to bounce my way. When Dad had his first heart attack 3 years ago, everything changed. It happened on a Tuesday morning. He was at a job site arguing with a subcontractor about something, and then he was on the ground. The crew called 911. Nathan called me from the hospital waiting room, his voice shaking in a way I had never heard before. "They don't know if he's going to make it," he said. "Kelsey, what do we do?" What we did was survive. Dad pulled through, but the recovery was long and complicated. He couldn't work for months. He couldn't think clearly for even longer. The man who had run the business from memory and handshake deals suddenly couldn't remember which vendors were paid and which ones were threatening to sue. Nathan's solution was to delegate more and trust the process. He said we needed to empower the team and let things flow naturally. Translation: he had no idea how anything worked and hoped it would fix itself. My solution was to spend 6 months rebuilding every system from scratch. I digitized the contracts, scanning years of handwritten agreements and faded invoices into organized folders. I set up proper accounting software that actually tracked income and expenses instead of relying on my dad's legendary memory. I created a cloud backup system so nothing could be lost if a computer crashed or a pipe burst in the office. I established vendor portals with automated payment reminders. I built a payroll system that calculated taxes correctly and sent direct deposits on time. I structured the retirement accounts so they were actually earning money instead of sitting in a checking account losing value to inflation. I created password protocols and access hierarchies and backup authentication systems. I documented everything in manuals that anyone with basic computer skills could follow. I did all of this while working my full-time job at a tech company 40 minutes away. I would leave the office at 6, drive to my parents' house, work on the business systems until midnight, drive home, sleep for 5 hours, and do it again. I didn't ask for a salary. I didn't demand a title. I didn't even ask for a thank you. I did it because my dad was sick and someone had to step up, and Nathan wasn't going to be that someone, no matter how many times he talked about stepping into his leadership role. Nathan's contribution during this time was to suggest we modernize the logo, and spend $15,000 on a rebrand that changed exactly nothing about how the business operated. He hired a designer friend of his girlfriend's to create new business cards and a website that looked sleek but couldn't actually process payments or schedule appointments. He also started attending networking events that were really just parties at expensive restaurants, putting the meals on the company card and calling it business development. But because his name was Nathan Morgan and mine was just Kelsey, he got to sit at the head of the table during family meetings while I sat in the corner with my laptop, keeping everything running in the background. I told myself it didn't matter. That I was doing this for Dad, not for recognition. That someday, when things were stable, I could step back and let them figure it out. I told myself a lot of things that turned out to be wrong. The family meeting that resulted in my exile happened on a Wednesday. I wasn't invited. That's the part that still gets me when I think about it. Not the outcome, not the betrayal, but the simple fact that they held a meeting about my future without bothering to include me in the room. I found out later, through my cousin Amy, who heard it from her mom, who heard it from my mom during a weak moment, what actually went down. Nathan had been positioning himself for months, planting seeds, dropping hints at Sunday dinners and holiday gatherings. Little comments about how I was difficult to work with, suggestions that my control issues were holding the business back, complaints that he couldn't step into his leadership role while I was micromanaging everything from the shadows. He made me sound paranoid, territorial, unstable. His new girlfriend, Vanessa, had apparently been coaching him. She had an MBA from some online program and a lot of opinions about family business dynamics and succession planning and streamlining leadership structures. I had met her twice. Both times she looked at me like I was a piece of furniture that didn't match the room. She asked questions about the business that sounded innocent, but felt like reconnaissance. How many employees? What's the revenue? Who handles the accounts? I should have seen it coming. In my job, I'm trained to recognize social engineering, people who gather information slowly and carefully before making their move. But I didn't expect it from my own family. I was too busy keeping the lights on to notice someone mapping the power grid. The meeting was Vanessa's idea. Get everyone together without me. Present a united front. Make the decision feel democratic, even though the outcome was predetermined before anyone sat down. According to Amy, Nathan gave a whole speech about fresh starts and new chapters and how the business needed to evolve past old structures to reach its full potential. He talked about bringing in new energy and new ideas and creating space for growth. He never mentioned that the old structure was me, or that the new energy was him finally getting what he thought he deserved. Or that creating space meant pushing me out of the way so he could pretend he had built something instead of inherited it. My parents went along with it because they were tired, because they were confused, because Nathan was loud and confident and present, and I wasn't there to explain what would actually happen if they cut me out, because believing your son is easier than admitting you never really saw your daughter. So they voted. Unanimously, apparently. My mom, my dad, my brother, 3 people deciding my future in a room I wasn't allowed to enter. And Nathan sent his text like he was firing an employee instead of disowning a sister. By day 3, the panic had reached a rolling boil. The payroll deadline came and went. Without access to the system, Nathan couldn't process payments. He couldn't even see the account balances. The login page just stared at him, cursor blinking in the password field, waiting for credentials he had never bothered to learn. The crew, 12 guys who had been with my dad for years, who depended on those checks to pay rent and buy groceries and keep their families fed, started calling the office line demanding answers. Some of them had worked for Morgan Family Construction longer than I had been alive. They deserved better than silence. Nathan tried to handle it the way he handled everything, with confidence and zero competence. He told them there was a technical issue and payments would be delayed a few days. He promised bonuses for the inconvenience. He assured everyone that everything was under control. Bonuses he couldn't pay because he didn't have access to the accounts. Control he didn't have because he had never bothered to learn how anything worked. The vendors started calling next. A lumber supplier wanted to know why their invoice from 3 weeks ago was still unpaid. They had been patient, they said, but patience had limits. A concrete company threatened to pull their equipment from an active job site if they didn't receive payment within 48 hours. An insurance company sent a notice that coverage would lapse if the premium wasn't processed by the end of the week. Nathan couldn't even log into the email system to respond to them. Every bounce-back message, every password incorrect notification, every failed authentication attempt was a reminder that the person he had voted out was the only person who knew where anything was. I knew all of this because my friend Derek, one of the foremen who had been with my dad since the beginning, started texting me directly. "Kelsey, what the hell is going on? Nathan says you locked everyone out of everything. The guys are talking about walking off the job. Please tell me you can fix this. I've known your dad for 20 years. This is going to destroy him." I told Derek the truth, that I had been removed from the family and the business by unanimous vote, that I was honoring their decision by stepping away completely, that if they needed access to the systems I had built, they would need to contact their lawyer and figure out a legal path forward. He sent back 3 words: "This is insane." I agreed. But insane was what they had chosen, and choices, as I had learned from watching my family operate, have consequences. On day 4, my mom showed up at my apartment. I saw her on the building's security camera before she even rang the bell. She stood in the lobby for a full minute, clutching her purse like a shield, looking smaller than I remembered. Her hair was grayer than the last time I had seen her, and she kept glancing around like she expected someone to tell her she was in the wrong place. Part of me wanted to leave her standing there. Part of me wanted to watch her realize what it felt like to be on the outside of a locked door, waiting for permission that might never come. But she was still my mom. And despite everything, I wasn't cruel. Not yet anyway. I let her up. She walked into my living room and immediately started crying. Not the manipulative crying I had seen from Nathan's girlfriends over the years, the kind designed to end arguments by making everyone feel guilty. Real tears, the kind that come from genuine confusion and regret, and the sudden realization that something has gone terribly wrong. "We didn't know," she kept saying, dabbing at her eyes with a crumpled tissue. "Nathan said you wanted out. He said you told him the business was too much stress. He said this was what you wanted. He said we were doing you a favor." I sat in the armchair across from her and didn't say anything. I just listened, watching her story fall apart against the reality of Nathan's text still sitting on my phone. She talked for almost 20 minutes, about how Nathan had been so convincing, about how he had shown them a business plan for the future that didn't include me, about how Vanessa had explained that healthy families sometimes needed to make difficult transitions, for the good of everyone. She talked about how my dad had hesitated, had said maybe they should call me first, but Nathan had insisted that the decision needed to be made quickly, before I could manipulate the situation. Manipulate. That was the word he used. Like protecting systems I had built from scratch was some kind of psychological warfare. When she finished, I showed her the message. "You're no longer part of this family or the business. Don't contact us." She read it 3 times, her face cycling through confusion, recognition, and something that looked like shame. "He told us you agreed to step back," she whispered. "He said you were relieved. He said you had already mentally checked out months ago. Does that sound relieved to you?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. "Does that sound like someone who agreed to anything?" She shook her head slowly, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. "Nathan has been telling us things for months," she admitted. "That you were burned out. That you resented the responsibility. That you wanted to focus on your own career and let him take over. We believed him because it was easier than asking you directly. Because asking you meant admitting we had put too much on your shoulders in the first place." "And the vote?" I pressed. "The unanimous decision to cut me out?" She looked at the floor. "He said it was a formality, that you had already mentally checked out. We thought we were doing you a favor by making it official." I sat back and let the silence stretch between us. The afternoon sun slanted through my windows, dust motes floating in the light. Somewhere outside, a car honked. Mom, I built every system that business runs on. Every single one. I set up the accounts, the payroll, the vendor relationships, the insurance, the retirement structure, everything. I did it for free while working my own job because Dad was sick and someone had to step up. And Nathan's response was to spend months telling everyone I was difficult and burned out, then hold a secret meeting to vote me out so he could take credit for everything I created. She started crying harder. I know. We were wrong. Can you please just fix this? The guys need to be paid. The business is going to collapse. Your father is going to lose everything he built. I took a breath and made a decision. I can fix the immediate problems, I said. But not as a family member. Not as someone you can vote out when it's convenient and vote back in when you need something. If you want my help, it comes with terms. Written terms. Legal terms. And Nathan doesn't get to make decisions about my involvement ever again. She nodded quickly, desperately. Whatever you need. I'll talk to your father. We'll make it work. Just please help us. I should have felt satisfaction in that moment, the validation of being needed, the vindication of being right. Instead, I just felt tired. Tired of being invisible until something broke. Tired of being the safety net no one acknowledged until they fell. The meeting happened 2 days later at the lawyer's office. Marcus Webb's conference room was exactly what you'd expect from a small-town attorney who had been doing family business law for 30 years. Dark wood furniture, hunting prints on the walls, coffee that had been sitting on the warmer too long. The kind of place where handshakes still meant something and everyone knew everyone else's business. Nathan walked in like he owned the room, Vanessa trailing behind him with a leather portfolio that probably cost more than my first car. She was dressed for battle in a sharp blazer and heels that clicked against the hardwood floor. He was wearing the same smug expression he'd worn every day of his life, the one that said the world owed him something and he was just here to collect. My parents sat on one side of the table, looking exhausted in a way that went deeper than physical tiredness. My dad had aged 10 years in the past week. My mom kept twisting her wedding ring around her finger, a nervous habit I remembered from childhood. I sat on the other side with my own lawyer, a woman named Patricia Chen, who specialized in business disputes and had exactly zero patience for family drama. I had found her through a colleague at work, someone who had seen this kind of situation before and knew that family loyalty could be a weapon as easily as a shield. Marcus Webb, the family lawyer, started by summarizing the situation in that careful, neutral way lawyers learn to speak. The business accounts were frozen. Payroll was overdue. Vendors were threatening legal action. Insurance was about to lapse. 2 job sites were on hold because materials couldn't be purchased. All because access to every digital system was controlled by passwords only I knew. Nathan interrupted before Marcus could finish. "This is ridiculous," he said, leaning forward with his hands flat on the table. "She's holding the business hostage because she's upset about a text message. This is exactly the kind of emotional manipulation I was talking about." Patricia leaned forward, matching his energy, but with ice where he had bluster. "The text message that informed my client she was no longer part of the family or the business? The one sent after a meeting she wasn't invited to, about her own future, where decisions were made without her input or consent? That text message?" Nathan's jaw tightened. "It was a business decision. We had concerns about her management style." "What concerns specifically?" Patricia asked. "She's controlling. She doesn't share information. She makes decisions without consulting anyone. She acts like she's the only one who matters." Patricia pulled out a folder, thick with documents I had provided. "I have here the LLC operating agreement your family signed 3 years ago, when Kelsey restructured the business after your father's health crisis. It clearly states that Kelsey Morgan is the designated administrator for all digital systems, and that her signature is required for any major financial decision over $5,000. It also states that removing a managing member requires written notice and a 60-day transition period, during which all access credentials must be formally transferred." She turned a page. "Did any of that happen?" Marcus looked uncomfortable, shifting in his chair like the leather had suddenly gotten too warm. There may have been some procedural oversights. Procedural oversights. Patricia repeated slowly, letting the words hang in the air. You mean the family violated their own operating agreement, locked out the only person who knows how to run the business, and now they want her to fix their mess without any accountability for what they did? Nathan stood up, chair scraping against the floor. This is exactly what I'm talking about. She's impossible to work with. Everything is a fight. Everything is a power play. We can't run a business this way. Sit down, my dad said quietly. Nathan froze. In 34 years of life, I had never heard my dad use that tone with him. Not when Nathan crashed the company truck. Not when Nathan lost a major client by missing 3 meetings. Not when Nathan spent $15,000 on a rebrand nobody asked for. Sit down. Dad repeated, his voice harder this time. And listen. Nathan sat, Vanessa's hand found his arm, squeezing in that possessive way girlfriends do when they sense they're losing ground. My dad turned to me. For a long moment, he just looked at me, really looked, like he was seeing me for the first time in years. Kelsey, I'm sorry, he said, his voice rough with something that might have been emotion or might have been exhaustion. I should have talked to you before that meeting. I should have asked what you wanted instead of believing what was easy. Your mother and I made a mistake, and the business is paying for it. You're paying for it. That's not fair, and I know it. He looked at Nathan. And you. I don't know what's been going on in your head, but your sister built everything we're sitting here arguing about. Every system, every account, every structure that keeps this business running. While you were talking about rebranding and networking and fresh starts, she was keeping the lights on. You don't get to vote her out and then demand she fix your problems. Nathan's face went red. That familiar flush of anger he got whenever things didn't go his way. So what? She's in charge now? After everything? I'm the one who's been here every day. I'm the one clients know. I'm the one carrying the Morgan name. She's been in charge, Dad said flatly. We just didn't want to admit it. The resolution took 3 weeks to formalize. Patricia drafted new documents that gave me actual ownership stake in the business, not just administrative access that could be revoked on a whim. I became a managing partner with veto power over major decisions. My signature was required for anything involving more than $10,000. My name was on the accounts in a way that couldn't be erased by a family meeting I wasn't invited to. Nathan stayed on, but in a diminished role. Sales and client relationships, the things he was actually good at when he bothered to show up. No access to accounts. No authority over personnel decisions. No ability to make promises the business couldn't keep. No girlfriend sitting in on meetings offering opinions about leadership dynamics. Vanessa was banned from all business discussions. Permanently. That was non-negotiable. And for once, nobody argued. My parents signed everything without objection. They were tired of the drama and finally willing to admit that the person they had been overlooking for decades was the only one who knew how to keep their retirement intact. The Monday after the paperwork was filed, I walked into the Morgan family construction office for the first time in weeks. Derek was there, along with most of the crew, waiting in the parking lot to see if payroll was finally going to happen. Their faces were a mix of hope and skepticism. The look of people who had been promised things before and learned not to believe until they saw proof. I nodded at them as I walked past, unlocked the door with the key I had never surrendered, and sat down at the computer I had set up 3 years ago. I logged into the systems with passwords I had just reset to something Nathan would never guess, and I processed every overdue payment in under an hour. Paychecks, vendor invoices, insurance premiums, everything that had been frozen, unfrozen, everything that had been neglected, addressed. When I finished, I walked back outside. Derek was still there, checking his phone, probably waiting for the direct deposit notification. His phone buzzed. He looked at the screen, then looked at me. "Thank God you're back," he said, relief flooding his voice. I shook my head. I was never gone, they just forgot who was actually holding everything together. 6 months later, the business is doing better than ever. The systems I built are running smoothly, humming along in the background the way good infrastructure should. Payroll goes out on time every 2 weeks. Vendors get paid within their terms. Invoices go out promptly and payments come in steadily. The crew is stable for the first time in years. Derek told me the morale is better than it's been since before my dad got sick. The guys feel like they can trust the business again, because they know there's actually someone paying attention to the details. My parents are actually planning for retirement instead of just hoping it works out. The investment accounts I restructured are growing. The retirement timeline I mapped out for them is realistic and achievable. For the first time, they can see a finish line that doesn't involve working until they drop. Nathan and I don't talk much. He comes to the required meetings, sits through the agenda I set, does his part with sales and client relationships, and leaves without making eye contact. He's not happy about the new arrangement, but he's smart enough to know that pushing back would cost him whatever position he has left. Vanessa is long gone. 2 months after the lawyer meeting, she moved on to some other guy. Probably one with a family business she could try to infiltrate. Nathan was devastated for about a week, then moved on to someone else who I'm sure will be equally charming and equally temporary. I'm not angry anymore. I thought I would be. I thought this whole experience would leave me bitter and hard, carrying around resentment like a stone in my pocket. Instead, I just feel clear. Clear that trust without boundaries is an open door for the wrong person to walk through and rearrange everything. Clear that being the capable one in a family doesn't mean letting people weaponize your competence against you when it suits them. Clear that when someone tells you you're out, you're allowed to believe them. And you're allowed to take everything you built with you when you go. Not as revenge, but as recognition of what actually belongs to you. If there's any lesson in all of this, it's that you can love your family and still refuse to be their unpaid IT department, their invisible safety net, their silent engine when they decide you're inconvenient or standing in the way of someone else's ambition. You can forgive without giving the passwords back. And if someone ever texts you that you're no longer part of the family, you're allowed to respond with 2 words, and then show them exactly what they lost when they decided you were expendable. Maybe you have your own version of this story. A time when someone used your skills like a utility they could turn on and off at will. A time when the person who did the least got the credit while you worked in the shadows. A time when family meetings happened without you. Decisions were made about your future in rooms you weren't allowed to enter. If you do, I hope you learn faster than I did. That setting boundaries isn't revenge. It isn't cruelty. It isn't abandonment. It's self-preservation. And sometimes that's the only thing worth protecting, more than the family name itself. So let me ask you this. If the people who benefited from your work decided you were disposable, would you fight to stay? Or would you do what I did? Lock the doors on your way out and let them discover what life looks like without the person who is holding everything together? I made my choice, and for the first time in years, I'm the one in control of my own story. Not Nathan, not Vanessa, not family meetings that happen without me, just me and the passwords I earned the right to keep.